are Ready, Set, Co-Teach, and we are here today to talk to you guys a little bit about the vocabulary strategies that we use in our co-taught classrooms. So first we're going to introduce ourselves. So I'm Allison, Miss Caudle, as the students know me. I am the ESL teacher, kindergarten through second, here at school, and I co-teach with John and with Ashley.
I'm Ashley Blackley. The kids call me Miss Blackley, obviously, and I teach first grade.
Okay, I'm John, better known as Mr. Cox, and I teach second grade here.
So today we just wanted to share with you a few things that we use in our co-taught classrooms to help with vocabulary, because both classes are, you would say, roughly 50%, LEP learners, so English as a second language. So I'm going to go ahead and start with highlighting. So highlighting is something we use across the board. I'm a color coding fanatic, they will tell you. I drive them crazy because I'm like, we need to color code it.
You actually went out and purchased for my classroom sets of highlighters for the kids to have multiple colors.
I did. And we all have like different colored expo markers so it matches. So for vocabulary purposes, highlighting, the way we use it is when we have a text that is an extensive text, we will pre-read it. So that's something that's really important to do, to pre-read a text before you give it to students, to know to anticipate maybe where the misunderstandings might be. So we do that. We pull out tier 2, which are kind of the more common vocabulary words, and also multiple meaning words. And then we pull out tier 3 words, which are content specific, like precipitation, or give me another one.
Right now,
evaporation,
condensation,
any of those.
Just got through the water cycle and weather in my class, so those are the ones that we
at the top of our brains. So what I do is I go through and I will highlight like the tier 2 words in one color, usually pink, and then the tier 3 words in yellow. That's just my like teacher copy, so I know what we're talking about. And then when I present the vocabulary words to the students in small group or in whole group, we have the students highlight the words themselves. So then when they actually go to read the text, whether it's choral reading with us or it is reading in a partner group or independently, they're familiar with those words and they can read more fluently, and it's easier to comprehend because we've already talked about those words in class. And we'll talk to you a little bit more about actually how we talk about the words and teach them when we get there. So that's the first one, is highlighting.
All right, and that leads really well into our next one, which is gestures, because prior to reading any text, we also go through and we look at all of the tier 2 vocabulary, and then we think of some type of a gesture that is going to work really well with that word. So, for example, one of the multi-meaning words that we used last week was itching, and so we had previously taught them itching and that the movement was itching. But in this text, it said that the character was itching for a snack. And that could be very confusing to English learners. So we had to talk about that word specifically and tell them, okay, we're not going to go itching. We're actually going to say that we're very hungry or that we're itching for a snack when we taught that word or when we got to that word in the text. And you just saw a video on Twitter recently of us doing some of those examples if you want to see more. For example, we had the word jumble, so we were like jumble. And it's a really engaging way to get the kids interested in the text that you're reading and to make sure that they're paying attention, because sometimes kids can, look away or not focus when you're reading, so it gets them where they have to be listening because they're listening to those vocabulary words,
anticipating those words.
Yes, and they get really excited about it. It's a huge thing. Right before we read, we say, okay, what do we do before we read? And they're like, vocabulary!
Exactly. And you're activating those learning styles. So those kids that are just sitting in your class bored for the last 20 minutes, they look forward to the vocabulary because it's something that they can actually do.
It's kinesthetic.
Exactly.
So it goes right for one of those learning styles. So we try to incorporate as many learning styles as we can in our classes, and kinesthetic is one of them that gestures does a really good job with.
And my favorite part about gestures is that when we read a text like months down the road, they'll remember the vocabulary words that we taught them at the beginning of the year, and they're still doing those movements I think one that we did at the beginning of the year was danger.
Yes,
They were
danger.
like danger, and now they do that in any book where that word is there, or if it says dangerous, they know to kind of use that language too.
Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so John.
So that your example of itching actually leads perfectly into one of mine. The way that we teach context clues. Your example of itching, at one point itching was the scratching, and another point itching meant you were hungry. In second grade at our school, our students take a standardized test twice during the school year. First time it's 30 questions, second time it's 40 questions, and they have to sit down for 3 hours. And that's something that they're just not used to. So we have to prepare them to take the test. And we found in the reading test, when we went through every single reading passage that the students have to take, there are those tier 2 multiple meaning words in the text. And there always is a question asking about those meaning of those words. So in my classroom, we have a word detectives poster that is prominently displayed. And whenever we go through a text, we make sure to pull out those words. We make sure that in our small groups, we take time with those words. I believe today in your small group, the students were looking at the word rose, which when you hear the word rose, you immediately think of the flower. But in the context of the poem, it was rising up out of, I believe it was a bed.
Yes.
Yeah. So having students go through, read the sentence before, read the sentence after as well, and then make a guess. And then they have to put that word in the sentence and see if that makes sense in the context of the sentence.
And that's a huge thing, is having that skill of replacing a word with another word and asking themselves, does that make sense in this sentence based on my context clues? That's huge.
When you're doing that, you're building critical thinking skills because they're evaluating their own answers. And they can tell you pretty right away, does that make sense? And by the time you're finishing the sentence, and when we do a whole group, like half the kids are like, no, that one doesn't make sense. So like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. So the next one that I'm really excited to talk about, because I think this is basically like our biggest one, is the Big Six. So we call the Big Six this. I don't know if y'all can see this, but I'll post this with the video. But we call it the Big Six, and I'll just read it to you first, and then I'll go through real quick and explain it to you. So let me see if I can hold it at least. You got me?
Yep.
Okay. Can I see? Okay, perfect. So the first one is when we pre-teach vocabulary, we'll say it 3 times. Then we give a kid-friendly definition. We give examples, and then non-examples, and then we provide either a visual in the form of a picture or an illustration or something, or a gesture. Or you could do both. But there's only Big Six, so I couldn't say both. Okay. And the last one is to read it in context. That is so important because, as John and Ashley both were just talking about, the context is what matters, because that is what gives the word the meaning. All right. So thank you, John.
No problem.
Co-teachers help co-teachers. So this is the Big Six. So if you guys don't mind, can we model it real quick?
Absolutely.
So I'll do the Big Six and you guys act like you're the students.
Okay.
Okay. So, all right, guys. So today one of our new words is going to be expert. Can we say expert 3 times?
Expert,
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 expert. Good. Does anyone know what expert means? John.
Isn't expert when you're like really good at something?
Yes, expert means to be really good or knowledgeable at something. Okay, so for example, I am an expert at teaching. You are an expert at being a student. You are an expert at riding your bike.
I'm an expert at soccer.
You're an expert at soccer? Awesome. So I want you guys to turn and tell your partner really quickly something you're an expert at.
I'm an expert at playing video games.
No,
I love.
I'm an expert at playing video games.
We're both experts at playing video games.
Okay. I'm an expert at shopping.
I am an expert at sleeping.
Oh,
Great,
okay.
great. Everyone did such a great job with that. Okay, so
Sleeping.
Yes.
Okay, so is somebody who, if they took a test on all the different phases of the moon and they got all of them wrong, are they an expert at the phases of the moon? No, that is not an expert. That's the opposite of an expert, okay? So that's a non-example. Now, for expert, we're going to go like this. Expert, because we're really, really smart. We know a lot about something. So when I say it, you're going to say it and do the motion. Are you ready? Okay. Expert, expert. Good job, you guys.
And you have to say it. The students cannot just go like this.
That's important. The students need to say it. So there's research that shows that students need to constantly be using a word, not just saying it by itself, but also using it in context for it to really stick. So we have them, they must say the word and do the motion every time they hear the word or see the word in text. Okay.
Yeah. And so one thing I just want to stop and point out is that the first thing that Allison asked was, does anyone know what that word means? And it's very important in our co-taught classrooms that we do have general ed students in our room, and it's really important to access that prior knowledge because there are students that already do know what the word is, and when you give them the opportunity to explain what the word is, you're giving them an opportunity to model their speaking and model their thinking for those English language
and
learners.
It's really good because it helps with misconceptions.
Yes, absolutely.
So I cannot remember what the word was.
We had one just yesterday, the other day. Pest. Remember, someone thought it was past.
Yeah, and so we said pest, and they were hearing past.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good that even though in first grade, even if you write it on the board, they're still they may be confused with what word you're actually asking about.
Yeah, and so it's great to address those misconceptions right on the spot.
Yes.
And the last one of the big six is reading context. So I obviously don't have anything to model for expert today, but you would either have a sentence or a short little paragraph or something that the students could read really quickly so that they could see the word in context. And of course, they're going to see it in the read aloud or in the text that you're using that day because that's why you chose that word to teach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's something we do literally every lesson, every day, multiple times a day. It's so fast. You can literally do it in less than 5 minutes, and it enhances your instruction and the comprehension of the students like twofold.
Yeah. And this is a strategy that you can bring outside of the reading curriculum. It's something that I use in math, science, and social studies all the time. If my students, when we're going into a subtraction problem, they have to borrow a number. My students don't refer to it as borrowing; they refer to it as decomposing, and they know the action trick of breaking apart a number, so they have it. And we just did partitioning, so it's breaking apart into equal groups. And so we talked about the differences, and you can get into the hand motions that way and the gestures using that. And it really is one of the most powerful things that we do.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so the next one that we're going to talk about is sentence starters or sentence frames. And I know a lot of people have probably heard of sentence starters or sentence frames, but we cannot put enough emphasis on the use of sentence starters and sentence frames for English learners. We use these orally and when the kids are asked to do something in writing. So anytime that we're having a conversation in class and we say, all right, guys, I want you to turn and talk to your peanut butter jelly partner or to your droid duo. We give them a sentence starter orally. So, for example, right now we're talking about predicting, and we say, all right, I want you guys to make a prediction about what's going to happen next in this story. And then we say, all right, peanut butter jelly time. They turn to their partner and they're going to use the sentence starter. I predict blank because blank. We have that on our board in our classroom right now. And then another way that we use it is in writing. So anytime that we ask them to complete a task, we give them a sentence starter because it helps them to be more successful. And if your kids are more advanced and they don't need them, they don't have to use them.
Right.
But we provide that for them. So going back to color coding, we have our compare and contrast sentence starters right here. This was adapted for first grade, so there are some more sentence starters that you could use with compare and contrast, and John uses more in second grade. But in first grade, we just use these two, and it's just we have it there ready for them. So anytime that they are comparing and contrasting, they can look back at that poster and utilize that to complete the work.
Yeah, and something cool about most of our anchor charts like this that have sentence frames on it is, if you can see, they're laminated, right? And they're not laminated so that, they are laminated so we can reuse them, but they're so easy because we can literally write in this blank as an example. Yeah, and then erase it. So we can use this over and over again on the board.
This is Allison's from her whiteboard right now.
He just went and stole it.
Yeah, and so she's writing right on it, and it's just, it connects the dots for the students where they're working.
But something really important, and that brought it up, is that when you use sentence starters or sentence frames, you need to make sure that the students are not copying blank and blank are alike because blank, that they're actually writing the words first as a complete thought, because you don't want them to learn to write or to speak like that. and are alike because, and then go back and add those words into the sentence. You want them to be speaking in a fluent language.
Right, because this is the structure of a sentence. If they're writing blank and blank are alike because blank, and then going back and filling in the blanks, they're not getting the correct sentence structure, right? So we always say, when you get to a blank, what do? And the kids go, you stop and think. All right, so that they know they never write those blanks. When you get to a blank, you stop, think, and you fill it in. And it's very important that that's the way sentence frames are used. Awesome.
Okay, so my next piece is, if I knew what my next piece was a year ago, I would have hated it and yelled and complained.
He still does.
Yeah. So the one part of my last part is songs and chants that we use in our classroom.
Some of my favorites, John.
Yeah.
So fun.
So the chants part is really a huge part of my classroom structure all throughout the day. And if you follow us on Twitter, you may have just seen a video recently of how Allison and I start the day in my classroom every single day.
Who's the best second grade class?
Us. And that type of chant, that type of energy, it's infectious in the classroom. Yes. And it is important that I start my day every single day like that. And it really, you're modeling speaking when you're chanting like that. You're modeling energy. You're building a classroom culture. So chanting, even outside of the reading instruction, really to me is a huge deal. I tend to have a very noisy, boisterous classroom because of that reason. And
you put loud and loud together, you just get louder.
Exactly. So chanting the vocabulary, and even just the way we repeat the vocabulary during the Big Six, it lends itself to chanting. It lends itself to having your students at any time engaged in what you're doing. So the way the songs and the chants really look in my classroom is I teach my students a sentence structure song that they need to know, because I find a lot of times students coming to me in second grade, they cannot write a complete coherent sentence, and their sentences oftentimes end, they will write an entire page and put one period at the very bottom. So it's really important that I spend time talking about this. Yeah. So
it allows us to be consistent together too, because he knows the chants, I know the chants, and literally when someone makes a mistake, we can chant it together or with the student, and we're doing the exact same.
The entire class joins in on it, and we might be addressing one student in our class while we're talking to them. But over at the table, another student who's working independently on his or her own work hears that and gets the reminder, oh, I need to start my sentences with capital letters. I need to put periods. I need to do these certain things. It does tie it in. Yes. I had to get pushed out of my comfort zone for this, but now that I am doing it, it is beneficial. It is effective.
And it keeps the kid, the number one thing that it does in my class, it keeps the kids engaged, but it also keeps them on task.
Yes.
Because if a kid is starting to get off task and then you do the chant, then they come back.
Yes. So, John.
Yeah.
He's going to be so mad at me for this.
I knew this.
John, will you sing us the capital letter chant?
Okay, yeah. So this was taken directly from a YouTube video. This was not written by me, but
we do not own the rights to this chant.
No, not at all. Not at all. Please don't sue me. Sentence begins with a capital letter. Capital letter is a letter that's big. Capital letter is not a small letter. A capital letter is big, big, big. The sentence ends in a period or an exclamation or a question mark. A sentence always ends in a period or exclamation or a question mark. Yeah, and it goes further into that, but those usually are the two verses out of the song that we have to refer to the most.
Yes. Over and over.
Yes. And anytime a student forgets a capital letter, like legitimately, John or myself will go, "Oh my goodness, what does a sentence start with?" And then the whole class will be straight into that chant.
Yep.
And then that person's like, oh my goodness, and it fixes it. So it's fun. It's a fun.
Well, and it also lends itself to like funny moments where I will say, I'll be with a student and I'll just say very loudly, a sentence ends in a, and then some of my students who are not fully paying attention, you know exactly what I'm talking about, will say a capital letter, and we're all like, what?
A sentence in a capital letter?
Right.
Yeah.
And the kids laugh, the kids enjoy it, and it just makes learning fun, which is, again, what we all try to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you want to make sure your students want to be in your class and want to come to school and see what you're going to do every day. And that's something that we also keep in the back of our minds always, not just, hey, these are effective strategies, but they're also engaging strategies for the kids.
Mhm.
So the last one we have for you today is the Frager model. So this is one that is research-based for vocabulary. I'll grab it. And it looks like this if you haven't seen it before. So basically, you put the word in the middle. So let's say the word's persistence. I remember because we did that this year. Persistence, right? You would write a definition here of persistence. Over here is a sentence in context with persistence, examples, and non-examples. So basically, it is using portions of the Big Six.
Yeah.
But it's written down, and this is something you could give students to fill out themselves before they read a text. You could do it whole group. Again, it's laminated, so we can write on it, erase it, use it again the next day, or use it 5 minutes later with a different word. So this is something that we do use. And if you were going to do a vocabulary journal or something similar, this would be great to include. So that the students knew how to draw it themselves or build this themselves.
For me, I find it really useful for those tier 3 vocabulary words that I'm teaching during my content
Absolutely.
lesson.
Something that you can't teach just really quickly with a real quick gesture. It's really good to use with those.
Yes. So we recommend checking out the Frager model if you haven't already.
Yeah. I mean, really, the examples and non-examples, that piece really just tackles their misconceptions.
Exactly.
Because you'll see something that a student's writing, and you're like, oh, no, that absolutely does not belong in that column. So.
Right. So some of these vocabulary strategies you guys have probably are like, I know that. But we just thought we'd give a little refresher and kind of share the ones that we use the most in our classrooms. And that we think are the most effective for our kids. And all of these things that we shared today are things that you can truly just incorporate into any lesson, and it won't take up any really much extra time, and it can be over any content area. So we just wanted to share that today. So if you don't already, follow us on Twitter, check out our blog. I will post a blog about all of this. We'll work on it together and with all examples and things. And feel free to shoot us any questions. We love to chat about co-teaching and English learners. So ready, set, co-teach.
Thank you, guys.
Set, co-teach.